Greetings to everyone. I am Rica.
I am Jazcha.
I am Reyneelyn.
I am Hazel.
I am Chelsie.
We are the Group 1 and our report is about the approaches to tourism planning and development. This is the last topic on Chapter 3, pages 52 to 62 on the book, and tungkol lang ito sa planning, ways, or approaches ng mga local government or tourism planners sa pag-develop ng isang destinations. So una is yung no planning approach. So marami tayong different approaches when it comes to tourism planning and development. Una na dito ang no planning approach. Sabi lang sa approach na to, many destinations start out with no planning at all, and planning may not be seen as necessary when the place has underdeveloped supply and demand, or where visitation rates are so small as to not perceive any impact from it. So karamihan naman talaga kapag ng isang tourist destinations, kapag nagsisimula pa lang, wala pa naman talagang plano. And then over time, kapag sumikat na sila and mataas na ang demand sa place na yon, noon pa lang nagsisimula yung mga tourism stakeholders na magplano for the development. However, sa approach na to, nandito yung mga destinations na usually ay local destinations lang and hindi naman talaga kailangan ng plano. So sa approach na to, kahit no planning, hindi maapektuhan yung mismong place kasi simula pa lang naman, they only have small tourist visitation. So example nito yung mga dams like Aulo and Pantabangan. Pwede rin dito yung mga mountains dito sa Nueva Ecija kung saan pwede mag-hike. Kasi di ba konti pa lang naman yung mga tourist visitation sa mga yon. Tapos yung ibang local government and the tourism stakeholders, nakikita nila if there's a need to plan na for the development ng isang destinations. Kaso yung mga local government unit, kahit naman na gusto nila na magsimula na sa pagpaplano for the development, nalilimit sila ng kanilang budget to invest in tourism. So next, kung ang una is no planning approach, ito namang next yung ad hoc planning. So sa ad hoc planning, ito yung mga pagpaplano lang kapag nangyayari lang yung pagpaplano if there's a need or may mga issues na nag-arise and then kailangan may solutions kaagad. So sa approach na to, hindi ito yung mga bonggang malalaking agenda in tourism industry. The ad hoc planning kasi, done yan step by step, piece by piece. Kaya nga siya piecemeal basis, kagaya ng fiesta, di ba? Pinagpaplanuhan yon ng mga ilang days muna bago yung mismong event. And then unti-unti ito, hindi isang bagsakan lang. In addition to that, this ad hoc planning is related to issue-based planning, kung saan yung issue-based is driven by issues na nag-emerge and kailangan agad ng solutions to those issues. Kagaya ng ad hoc planning, mayroong need to plan. So, integrated tourism planning. So, nangyayari ito sa mga destinations that are linked to the localities and have connections with the local resources, activities, products, production, and service industries. So, sa approach na to, ginagamit ito ng mga ganoong destinations kasi dapat they have connections and their whole operation is compatible with the activities of the local residents. And then, isang example ng sa approach na to is pinrovide ng National Tourism Development Plan or NTDP. So dito ina-address lang yung mga issues pertaining to the tourism infrastructure and connectivity, and tourism products and destinations competitiveness, and the human capital and institutional governance. So isang practical na illustration of the integrated planning in tourism ay makikita sa my transportation system in the United Kingdom. So kung saan yung mga airports, trains, and bus lines doon, walking distance lang siya from each other. Tapos may mga main train stations sila na pwede kang bumili ng day pass and the hop-on, hop-off buses, which will take you around London. Tapos pwede ka rin mag-sightseeing tour muna doon sa city nila bago ka dumiretso sa airport for your flights without worrying about traffic jam kasi nga, you can just walk pupunta sa airport kasi magkakalapit lang. And ganun din daw ang system sa may international airport, South Korea, but basis naman yung mga nasa arrival gates nila. Next, we have the boosterist approach. So dito sa approach na to, sinasabi na ang boosterism sees tourism as a positive force for economic development. So alam naman natin na ang tourism industry malaki yung nako-contribute niya sa ekonomiya ng isang bansa. May mga countries nga na nakarely na lang halos sa tourism industry. So kaunting background muna kung bakit nakikita ang tourism as a force for economic development. So maraming mga bansa nakikita yung tourism as an important sector for their economy, and isa na ron ang Philippines. According to my research, noong 2019, ang travel and tourism industry contributed 12.7% to the country's gross domestic product. And hindi lang yun, marami pang mga naipo-provide na employment ang tourism and hospitality industry sa mga tao dito sa Pilipinas. Kaya sobrang importante ng industry nito sa bansa natin, kahit sa ibang bansa din naman. So balik tayo sa may boosteries approach. Sa boosteries or boosterism approach, pasok dito yung mga ways or acts of promoting a town, city, or organization. So basically, para lang siyang marketing, pero ang pagkakaiba lang is pinopromote yung place for the sole purpose of tourism development. And then last, sinasabi na ang boosteries approach pwedeng product-led or market-led, state-led, industry-led, or kaya mga shared enterprise between the public and the private sector. So next, we have the product-led development. So sabi lang dito sa may product-led development, build it and they will come. Kasi yung approach na to, naniniwala na para maging successful ang isang tourism program, kailangan meron silang pinoprovide. And ano naman yung mga pinoprovide na yon? Ito yung mga infrastructure, facilities, and amenities para sa mga tourists. Siyempre, ano nga naman yung mga tourists sa isang lugar kung walang mangyari sa kanila doon, di ba? So unless na lang kung may mga sikat na tao sa lugar na yon, kahit na mga artista ganon, kahit na hindi isang sikat na tourist attraction yung lugar, may mga pupunta doon. Example nito sa yung product-led development, kapag nagtayo daw na isang theme park or water park, kahit pa sa sobrang malayong lugar yan, may mga pupunta pa rin doon na tourists. Lalo na with the right promotion and kung high quality ang attraction. Pero syempre, kailangan pa rin na mag-conduct ng research about sa mga potential markets kasi baka magtayo ka ng isang establishments or mag-offer ng mga products tapos hindi naman pala akma sa potential markets mo. So, yun lang yung pinapatunayan sa may product-led development approach. Next, we have the spatial planning approach. So, dito sa may approach na to, isa siyang type ng product-led tourism planning pero mas malawak siya. So kung yung product-led development approach ay tungkol sa mismong mga infrastructure, amenities, and facilities, ito namang spatial planning ay mas complex. Kasi patungkol doon sa mga destination layout and design. So involved dito yung approach na, involved na dito sa approach na to yung mga communities, access routes, attraction, complexes. So sa approach din na to, hindi lang yung mismong product or infrastructure, kung hindi yung buong place na nakapalibot sa isang particular destination. Si Gunn and Var, in-identify niya yung 3 spatial units in tourism. So una yung site scale. Dito yung mga, sinasabi ko nga kanina na particular na site mismo, like hotels, mga ganon. So yung mismong establishment. And then sunod yung destination scale. Ito yung mga communities, tsaka other areas na nakapalibot sa isang site. And then last, yung regional scale. So self-explanatory naman, mga provinces, region, or country. So ayun lang yung spatial units nila Gunn and Var. Pero meron pang another way to classify spatial units and provide naman yon ng Japan International Cooperation Agency at saka ng Department of Tourism. So itong provide nila na yon, tatlo din naman yon. Ito yung mga tourist site, tourism development area, and yung tourism cluster. So, tatlo yung provide nila. Tapos, si Gunn, sinabi niya na, si Gunn is the first guru on spatial tourism planning. Sinabi niya na, clustering is superior to dispersal, and then, nagresulta daw ang clustering sa better infrastructure, engineering, and crowd control, at saka shorter waiting times for travelers. Know the customers and satisfy them. Yun ang key sa demand-led approach para maging successful ang isang tourism program. So yung approach na to, similar kay Cutler's marketing orientation, kung saan inaalam yung needs and wants ng mga target market, and then dinideliver yon yung mga desired satisfactions na yon better than the rivals do. So sa industry natin, for me, very crucial yung step na to Yung alamin muna kung ano yung mga trends or kagustuhan ng mga potential customers. Kasi paano mo masasatisfy yung customers kung wala ka man lang background knowledge about them, di ba? Kaya na-provide din yung mga customer profile dahil doon. So through this approach, hindi lang magiging successful ang tourism, yung mga establishments or destinations that practices this approach, magkakaroon pa sila ng loyal customers. Itong demand-led approach, importante daw ito dahil sa dalawang reasons. So una, sinasabi na kailangan daw kasi na yung destination ng tourism product ay akma sa may market. And then pangalawa, demand projection ay basis para mag-expand sa physical capacity ng isang destination. So kung mataas ang demand, dapat mag-expand para mas marami ang ma-accommodate na tourists. Isang practical na paraan para magawa ang demand-led approach is to identify kung ano yung wants ng mga tourist market segments. And then dapat match iyon sa whatever na in-offer ng isang destinations. To talk about the next approach to tourism planning and development, here is Ms. Jazcha Manicad.
Bureaucratic or government-led approach. We know that bureaucratic has been broadly applied for management related to the running of business in a government. Sinasabi dito na this is the most central part when it comes to planning and developing an organization. Ang government ay may various type of policy that become instrument to promote tourism. Ito ay ang advocacy, money, action, and law. In order for us to better understand these four, let's explain them one by one. The first is the advocacy instrument. Sinasabi dito na related ito sa strategic plans, accreditation schemes, and investment schemes. Ito ay sumusuporta sa mga idea and strategy na nakaka-impluwensya sa mga opinions and decision of the people in an organization. It allows us to express our attitude or desire for the betterment of a country. The second is the monetary instrument. Through this instrument, the payment of travel taxes, user fees, license permits, tax relief, income tax holiday helps to beautify and further improve a place. The next is the government action. It refers to the infrastructure provision, marketing, promotion, education, and research with the help of this action. At nagkakaroon din tayo ng mga kaalaman to contribute and develop a research tungkol sa government management. And the last is the law. In a country, mahalagang magkaroon ng isang batas to avoid some critical problems and riots. Some rules and regulations need to be set aside to maintain justice and equality in a society. There are two types of bureaucratic approaches. The first is a central planning approach, kung saan dito isinisigawa ng mga ahensya sa antas ng bansa ang lahat ng mga nauugnay sa pagpaplano at pag-unlad ng isang turismo. Let's go back to the martial law in the 1970s and 1980s, where the state was the policymaker, planner, regulator, investor, developer, promoter, and trainer rolled into one. Alam natin during that time na ang mga military ang namamalakad ng bansa because it is under control of the armed forces of the Philippines led by the former president of the Philippines, Ferdinand E. Marcos. Ang North Korea is another example of a country with a centrally planned tourism development, kung saan ang mga hotels, restaurants, resort, the flag carrier Koryo Airlines, and tourism buses ay government ang namamahala. At mayroon din silang sariling school sa Pyongyang Tourism College, where tour guides and foreign language interpreters train them well, because their government maintains strict control over tourism, so they need a tour guide when going to a destination. The next is develop planning approach, where local government units assume to control tourism planning and development for their respective jurisdiction. Ibig sabihin nito ay ang mga opisyal ay may kapangyarihan to make a legal decisions and judgment in development a country. The Republic Act 7160 is also known as the Local Government Code. May obligasyon ito sa pagdi-deliver ng mga basic services to the hands of local government unit, or better known to us as LGU. The next approach is middle path approach, or Bhutan mode. Before I explain the middle path approach, alamin muna natin ano nga ba ang Bhutan. Bhutan is a Buddhist kingdom on the Himalayas Eastern Asia. It's known for its monasteries. Bhutan is located in the country in South Asia. This is the opposite of boost tourism is low volume, high yield tourism, which is Cavens called the middle path approach of Bhutan. Ang mga Bhutanese ay naniniwala na mas mahalaga ang gross national happiness kaysa sa plain material wealth. In the Kingdom of Bhutan, tourists is required to spend a high minimum amount of money per day to visit because there are a number of things that the fees cover such as standard accommodation and meals, internal taxes, and tourism royalty fees. Dahil ang main goals of this approach are to highlight issues, potential problems, and constraints and choices that our country has to make in order to ensure the conservation of our natural resources while pursuing economic development. This is the challenge of sustainable development for Bhutan. Bhutan, where strict control are imposed on the type and volume of tourism to maximize the adverse effect of tourism religion, culture, and environment. Dahil ang mga Buddhist ay hindi pumapayag na mahaluan ng ibang religion ang kanilang country. Like for example sa bansang Myanmar, Buddhism ang namumuno sa kanilang religion. Kaya ang mga ibang relihiyon tulad ng Muslim ay hindi binibigyan ng karapatan upang magtrabaho, makapag-aral, at mamuhay ng payapa. In short, wala silang bilang sa bansang Myanmar. The next approach is an environmental approach. Ang environment approach ay kinoconsider for being a tourism developed is endowed with their natural attraction of outstanding beauty, remote beyond the reach of commercial electric and water services or protected by laws such as the protected areas and domain of indigenous peoples. Under this approach, sinasabi dito ng edukasyon ang namumuno sa pagbabago ng mga behavior and the incorporation of daily pro-environmental choices. And also, environmental education teaches individual kung paano harapin ang mga issues through their critical thinking, and it enhances their own problem solving and decision making. It was said that Palawan is the only province in the Philippines to have a special law na tinatawag natin na Strategic Environmental Plan or RA 7611 dahil mayroon itong tribal land, forests, mines, agricultural areas, small island, mangroves, coral reefs, and also surrounding by sea. Ang carrying capacity ay isa sa may pinakamahalagang konsepto pagdating sa pagpaplano sa kalikasan. Sinasabi dito na walang maximum na bilang ng mga turista ang pwedeng bumisita sa kanilang destination as long as hindi dito nagdudulot ng distraction sa physical, economic, and socio-cultural environment na maaaring magbigay ng dissatisfaction sa mga tourists. There are different dimensions to carrying capacity. For environmental planning, sinasabi dito na ang maximum number of tourists ay nakadepende sa capacity ng isang lugar. Kapag napapansin na nila na hindi na makakilos ang mga turista, ay hindi na sila pwedeng magpapasok dahil may possible na masira ang mga resources na makikita sa loob ng destination. Inskip suggested that the carrying capacity for same area of land will vary depending on the type of tourism being developed. According to the University of the Asian, the type of tourism determines tourist attitude, expectation, and behavior which affect the pressure and impact of tourism on the destination. When it comes to capacity, ang lamang ng Netherlands ay umaabot sa 17 square meters up to 30 square meters in tropical beach resorts. Subalit, ang karaniwang capacity standard for good quality resort ay umaabot sa 10 square meters per person and 1 meter of beach frontage per person. Other capacity limits cited by the World Trade Organization or WTO expressed in visitor per day per hectare na umaabot sa 10,000 square meters. Ang una na dito ay ang forest park. Pagdating naman dito ay nasa 15 or less ang taong pwedeng makapasok. In high density picnicking naman ay may 300 to 600 people can enter. And for low density picnicking is only 60 to 200 people can enter. In golf, there are 10 to 15 people can enter. In fishing or sailing are 5 to 30 people can enter. In the water skiing, there are 5 to 15 people can enter. In hiking, there are 40 persons per day per kilometer of trail. And horseback riding are 25 to 80 persons per day per kilometer of trail. The concept of carrying capacity is to explain what you need to do and how to carry out your capacity limits within the destination. Ang carrying capacity ay tinutulungan tayo to determine all this and avoid disappointing clients. For example, the place in Puerto Princesa Underground River, the carrying capacity may never been known unless na magkakaroon na ng damage ang loob ng kuweba. Limit of acceptable change is another useful concept in tourism planning. This approach helps us to determine the limit of condition around tourist destination. Limits of acceptable tries to set a range minimum and maximum values for a given factor in terms of social, ecological, physical, and economic impact, which are considered as acceptable. Sinasabi dito na ang concept of limits of acceptable change is very difficult if there is insufficient data that is limited to understand natural dynamics, cyclical change, and seasonality of the site and ecosystem or species resilience. The next approach is ecosystem approach. Ayon sa Department of Tourism or DOT, bilang isang uri ng nagpapanatili ng turismo sa loob ng isang likas na yaman at pamana ng kultura sa isang lugar, kung saan ang pakikilahok sa komunidad, proteksyon at kasanayan sa mga katutubo tulad ng edukasyon sa etika at edukasyon sa kapaligiran ay isang mahalagang benepisyo para sa ekonomiya na kumukupo para sa pagpapayaman ng mga cultural resources ng komunidad. Sinasabi din dito na ito ay isang alternatibong approach para maprotektahan ang mga natural resources, especially biological diversity. Biological diversity is a living organism from all resources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystem. The creation of ecological experience and environmental awareness for tourists, and at the same time to protect and respect the natural and cultural resources. The next approach is social approach. In the word social, it is interacting with other people so that you can make a plan for tourism. Social approaches to tourism planning emphasize the role of stakeholders in the tourism planning process. This is the presence and behavior of other people. The next approach in tourism planning and development will be explained by Reyneelyn Mercado.
Participatory stakeholder approach. Participatory approach puts people at the center of the planning process. It is an approach in which each relevant stakeholder has a say in the deliberation and decision-making process. It means na ang bawat ideas and opinions about pagpaplano ay hindi lamang nanggagaling sa isang tao. Instead ay kumukuha ng idea, humalawak ng alaman sa iba't ibang tao na part ng isang organization. Kasi kapag kumuha ka ng maraming idea na galing sa mas maraming tao, mas magre-result yon ng pinakamagandang decisions. So, kung magsasucceed yung plano, yung kasama sa organization, kasama yung success. So, punta naman tayo sa stakeholders. Ano ba yung stakeholders? Stakeholders refers to groups of people or entities or individuals within a place who have an interest in tourism because they will be affected by a decision to develop or not develop tourism. Stakeholder government at all levels, business owners, non-governmental organizations, religions, groups, schools, indigenous people, local residents, etc. Their opinions, suggestions, shared experience, and apprehensions about future development need to be factored in the planning process. So, those people who's willing to extend their support sila yun, whether it is financial or in kind. For example, yung charity works ng mga company, halimbawa, kailangan nila ng sponsors, yun yung mga stakeholders. All you have to do is to recognize their support or help. For example, magbibigay ka ng certificates or token of appreciation sa kanila. So, participatory enhances a sense of ownership of the plan which translates into smoother implementation. Through consultations and workshops, stakeholders are able to share their knowledge and past experience with tourist development and help avoid pitfalls caused by ignorance of the realities of the community or the target market. Participation builds trust and social capital through transfer of skills to the community. So as it says in the quotation, many heads are better than one. So, which means walang mawala kung hingin mo yung opinion ng iba na well-experienced doon sa field ng tourism. They may be strong disagreements among the members of consensus, may be hard may be hard to establish, not everyone who sits at the table may be qualified to contribute in a meaningful way to the process. Dominant individuals who have vested interest or axe to grind may dominate the proceedings and ruin the process. Some groups may be just deliberately shun the proceedings for various reasons. Participatory approach is also time-consuming. So pag sinabing dominant individuals, sila yung mas matataas yung posisyon o mas marami yung bilang kung i-base sa botohan. Halimbawa, mas marami yung stocks nila, kaya pag may mas maganda pong idea sa kanila, sila pa rin yung masusunod. So, punta naman tayo sa community-based tourism. Community-based tourism or CBT is tourism that is owned and managed by communities and intended to deliver wider community benefit. The core idea of CBT is allowing the community to have control over tourism enterprise. So, community-based tourism daw ay yung mga locals o yung mga taong nakatira doon mismo yung nag-i-invite ng mga turista doon sa lugar nila. Ina-introduce or in-educate nila yung mga tao about dun sa culture and traits para malaman ng tao kung ano ba yung ginagawa nila doon, tsaka kung gaano kaganda yung place nila. Community-based tourism is an example of transactive planning approach, which is based on social learning theory and transactive interaction. The planner brings knowledge to facilitate shared understanding among people, clients who likewise bring personal knowledge to the planning process. Ayan, sabi may interaction between locals and tourists. Nagkakaroon ng knowledge yung mga tourists mula dun sa mga locals. Example dun, yung nag-hike kami sa Mapapait, yung guide dun is one of the locals. Ayun, nagkwento siya ng iba't ibang story about dun sa bundok. Kung gaano kadami yung aakyat doon, kung ano-ano yung mga wild animals doon. Ayan. So, punta tayo sa pro-poor approach. So, pro-poor approach, ito naman yung nakatuon sa pag-expand o pagpapalawak or pag-improve ng opportunities sa economy para sa mga mahihirap. Ito yung pagpapaunlad ng turismo, tulad ng pagbuo ng capacity buildings, permission sa pag-access sa infrastructures, at iba pang pangunahing mga serbisyo. So, example, mga magkokopra. Ang alam lang nila, niyog lang yung product ng coconut. Ayan. Through tourism, you can give them ideas how to create a product to a byproduct. At this, you will not only teach them to grow and to be productive, but you're also teaching them to make money. For PPT to succeed, meron daw mga principles. So, una doon, participation. Pangalawa, a holistic livelihoods approach, equity, flexibility, commercial realism, and learning. So, sa participation, by poor people in the decision affecting their livelihood priorities. Sa pangalawa, a holistic livelihoods approach, tourism is seen as part of the livelihood options in an area. Tourism may be main economic activity or serve only as supplement to existing livelihood activities. Equity, distribution of benefits and costs. Flexibility, pace, or scale of development may be adjusted as the case may be. Commercial realism, PPT does not have to be small scale. Linking micro and small tourism enterprises with mainstream tourism will help ensure their viability. Learning, lessons from poverty analysis, environmental management, good governance, and small enterprise development should be passed on to build the body of knowledge on PPT. So, punta tayo sa fair trade tourism. The fair trade fair trade movement is a response to the failure of conventional trade to deliver sustainable livelihoods and development opportunities to people in the poorest countries of the world. So, in other words, nakakapag-contribute ito sa sustainable development by offering better trading conditions and sinisecure nila yung mga rights ng mga marginalized producers and workers. So, pag sinabing fair trade and fair, patas, ang meaning nito is a trading partnership based on a dialogue, transparency, and respect that seek greater equity in international trade. Example, yung mga lugar na nakikipag-trade sa ibang lugar. Example, trading town to town or city by city. Example, product of Laguna is chinelas. Makikipag-fair trade sila sa mga gumagawa ng rubber. Halimbawa, Sorsogon, more production of rubber. Bibili sila ng rubber sa Sorsogon, tapos ibebenta naman nila yung chinelas sa kanila. Tapos, ayun, bibili nila yung pro materials, tapos bebentahan nila ng finished product, yung Sorsogon. So, fair trade organizations backed by consumers are engaged actively in supporting producers' awareness, raising, and in campaigning for changes in the rules and practice of the conventional international trade. So, sila yung mga tao sa likod ng fair trade movement. Tinuturuan nila yung mga producers na ma-improve yung kaalaman nila sa trading. Example, dati bartering lang. Nagtanim ako ng kamote, tapos nagtanim yung kapitbahay ko ng kamatis, palit kami. Ganun. Exchanging products. By giving them awareness and deep knowledge in trading, it will become an eye-opener for them. For example, instead of bartering products, pwede nyo lang iluto yung kamote para mag kamote Q. Ayan. From there, kikita sila ng pera. Fair trade tourism adheres to the basic principles of fair trade, which includes paying fair wages and working conditions, fair purchasing and operations, equitable distribution of benefits, and respect for human rights, culture, and the environment. So, ito naman yung pagbili ka sa isang lugar as a tourist, and ang reason mo kaya ka nagpupunta doon, para lang gumawa ng positive effects sa kapaligiran ng location, sa society and economy. So, meaning daw nito, pag-support sa mga negosyong hawak o pag-ari ng mga locals. And paglahok sa mga activities na hindi nakakasama sa environment and doon sa culture. Example nito, yung mga tree planting, tsaka yung paglilinis sa dagat. And here's Hazel for the next topic.
Sustainable tourism approach. According to World Commission on Environment and Development, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The definition has within it two concepts: the concept of needs and the ability to meet the present and future needs. Basically, when we talk about sustainable development, it means what we, the present generation, have inherited a certain amount of ecology and environment surrounding in terms of land, water, and air. When we leave it to the next generation, we should leave it at least in the same condition. On the other hand, sustainable tourism, which was derived from the parent paradigm of sustainable development, is defined as tourism that takes a full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities. Ibig sabihin lang nito na ang tourism ay dapat i-develop ng hindi nakakasira sa mga resources permanently. Kailangan nating i-ensure na may magagamit pa ang susunod na henerasyon na may enjoy din nila ang mga resources gaya natin. Sustainable tourism development is supported by the triple bottom line of environmental conservation, social justice, and economic viability. Tinatawag itong people, place, profit, We can also call it equity, environment, economy. Ito ay isang uri ng tourism na rumerespeto sa lokal na kultura, nangangalaga sa kalikasan at nagtataguyod sa social responsibility and fair commerce. Goals of sustainable tourism. There are 12 main goals of sustainable tourism development in which these goals reflect a multidimensional perspective and address concerns of various stakeholders. For us to understand more about the 12 goals, let's explain them one by one. Economic viability, to ensure the viability and competitiveness of tourism destinations and enterprises so that they are able to continue to prosper and deliver benefits in the long term. Local prosperity, to maximize the contribution of tourism to the economic prosperity of the host destination, including the proportion of visitor spending that is retained locally. Employment quality, to strengthen the number and quality of local jobs created and supported by tourism, including the level of pay, conditions of service, and availability to all without discrimination by gender, race, disability, or in other ways. Social equity, to seek a widespread and fair distribution of economic and social benefits from tourism throughout the recipient community, including improving opportunities, income, and services available to the poor. Visitor fulfillment, to provide a safe, satisfying, and fulfilling experience for visitors, available to all without discrimination by gender, race, and disability, or in other ways. Local control, to engage and empower local communities in planning and decision-making about the management and future development of tourism in their area in consultation with other stakeholders. Community well-being, to maintain and strengthen the quality of life in local communities, including social structures and access to resources, amenities, and life support systems, avoiding any form of social degradation or exploitation. Cultural richness, to respect and enhance the historic heritage, authentic culture, traditions, and distinctiveness of host communities. Physical integrity, to maintain and enhance the quality of landscapes, both urban and rural, and avoid the physical and visual degradation of the environment. Biological diversity, to support the conservation of natural areas, habitats, and wildlife, and minimize damage to them. Resource efficiency, to minimize the use of scarce and non-renewable resources in the development and operation of tourism facilities and services. Environmental purity, to minimize the pollution of air, water, and land, and the generation of waste by tourism enterprises and visitors. Principles and strategies of sustainable tourism. The guiding principles and strategies of sustainable tourism development are divided into 3 key phases. First is setting the course. Holistic. A holistic approach takes into account all impacts and relationships within the tourism sector itself and considers tourism may affect public policies. Dapat nating ipaliwanag o bigyang diin na ang pagde-develop ng tourism ay isa lamang option. Sa pag-unlad, pwedeng ma-develop pa ito sa isang main industry na makakapag-complement to other sectors, and in some cases, pwedeng i-disregard as an option para makuha yung development goals. Multi-stakeholder engagement. Tourism development must ensure buy-in support from the community. Sinasabi dito na dapat yung mga residente ay kasama din sa pagde-decide mula sa pagpaplano hanggang sa operational stage para maging aware din sila sa mangyayaring pagbabago sa kanilang lugar. Long-term perspective. Tourism must be developed with full consideration of the resources that are required to keep projects viable in the long run. Dapat alam ng mga planner na ang tourism ay hindi basta-basta na isasagawa, na maaari itong magtagal, maaaring hindi pumatok, at maaaring hindi na maibalik ang resources na nagalaw o nasira na. Address both global and local impacts. Global and local impacts affect each other. Hindi ito maiiwasan. Halimbawa nito yung local health issues that can spread and become pandemics na nagre-restrict for international travel. Gaya na lang na nangyayari ngayon sa atin. Year 2019, nag-start yung coronavirus sa Wuhan, China, kung saan maraming bansa ang naapektuhan, nag-lockdown at nagpatupad ng travel ban. Isa pang halimbawa yung nangyaring pagpapasabog sa World Trade Center na nagpapakita kung paano naaapektuhan ng local events ang global tourism. At isa pa ay ang climate change na kung saan naaapektuhan ang lahat ng destination. Sustainable consumption. Tourist consumption behaviors must be modified to ensure the viability of the planet. Halimbawa, may mga souvenir products kasi tayo na gawa mula sa endangered animals like ivory ornaments or shark fin dumplings. Yung iba naman ginagamit in producing clothes and bags. Dapat hindi bilhin ng tourist yung mga ganong product kasi kahit sa ganitong paraan lang makakatulong tayo na mapangalagaan yung mga resources na meron tayo. Developing the approach. Polluter pays principle. This means that those who cause negative impacts on the environment must shoulder the cost of mitigating or adapting to the damage caused by their actions. Halimbawa, nagputol ka ng isang puno, ang magiging kapalit noon is magtatanim ka din ng puno na katumbas ng pinutol mo. Pwede rin dito yung pag-collect ng environmental fees sa lahat ng tourist na pupunta sa isang destination para sa ganun magkaroon ng pondo para patuloy na maalagaan at maprotektahan yung isang lugar. Precautionary principle. Before any tourism project ensues, there should be a careful assessment of its impact. Marami kang kailangang i-consider at dapat alam mo yung mga magiging consequence para sa ganun alam mo kung paano siya i-handle. Life cycle perspective. Tourism development must consider impacts over the entire life cycle of the tourist attraction. Dapat ma-maintain natin yung tourism development kahit tapos na ang isang main event. Kailangan i-consider yung resources na gagamitin from initial phase of development until after use implications. Then yung mga planner kailangan makaisip ng paraan para magtuloy-tuloy yung success. Considering functional alternatives, choose the option that can provide the best return for the investment and the least damage to environment and culture. In tourism development, hindi lang natin dapat isipin na mabawi yung nagastos for investment or the income, but also we should consider some alternative plans na hindi masyado makakasira sa environment at culture natin. Respect limits. Tourism resources are finite. We should learn to accept limits. Kung hindi pa kaya ma-accommodate, dapat respetuhin natin ito. Maghintay or sumunod na lang tayo sa lahat ng sasabihin ng management, because establishing limits will ensure the ecological protection, community welfare, and visitor satisfaction. Halimbawa na lang ng ginawa ng Puerto Princesa Underground River. Gumawa sila ng booking system para makontrol yung capacity sa sensitive tourist site. Ensuring ongoing progress. Adapt to changes. Tourism planners, being sensitive to external environment, must put in place risk management strategies to handle shocks and crises. Dapat maging handa ang mga tourism planners sa possible problems na ma-encounter nila. They should consider the location and the possible climate change. Dapat mayroon na agad silang nakaredy na plano para maiwasan yung maaaring maging damage. And last, monitor with the use of indicators. Indicators provide evidence of changes over time, upon which adjustments to policies and actions can be based. Dapat gumamit ng indicators sa pagmamonitor dahil magagamit itong basehan kahit lumipas na ang panahon. It may be developed to capture the impact of interventions on the destination or specific sectors. Planning policies directions will be discussed by Chelsie de la Cruz.
Punta naman tayo sa planning policies direction. Ano nga ba ang planning policies direction? Ibig sabihin nito, ito yung mga panuto kung paano tayo magpaplano ng mga policies. Una dito ang the tourism development policy must emanate from the national level. Ang tourism development policy ay dapat daw maipakalat hanggang umabot ng national level para maging sigurado na ang mga turista na bibisita sa mga tourist attraction natin ay safe sila while visiting our country. The second one naman po ay tourism policy should aim to achieve the following goals. Una is economic benefits para ma-develop lalo ang mga tourist attraction ng ating bansa at mas mapalago ang ating ekonomiya. Alam naman natin na ang tourism industry ang nagbibigay ng malaking para ma-develop ang bansa natin. So kapag naging successful ang mga tourist sites natin, mas lalong nag-grow ang economy natin. Sunod naman is highly quality visitor satisfaction. Ang tourism policy ay gusto na ma-achieve na every tourist na mag-visit sa ating bansa ay mabibigyan natin ng ating excellent service. Hindi lang basta service, kundi excellent service para masatisfy natin sila at maaari na ma-recommend nila ito sa mga kaibigan nila na i-try ang service natin. Bukod sa maganda ang tourist attraction natin, nakakapag-provide pa tayo ng excellent service. Sunod, sustainable utilization of natural and cultural resources. Pinoprotektahan din ng tourism policy ang ating heritage sites, kahit ito ay pinagagamit bilang tourist attraction. Pinagagamit nila ang ating mga natural and cultural resources na may kasamang pag-iingat at pag-aalaga. Enhance community quality of life. There should be a balance of social, economic, and environmental goals. Tourism planning must enlist the corporation assistance and input the constituents. The role of various tourism entities must be clarified. Indigenous tourism is best. Ang meaning lang ng apat na ito ay dapat na maging balanse ang social, economic, and environmental goals para maaaring maiwasan ang mga problema. Kailangan din natin na ang bawat plano na pagdesisyonan ay malinaw at dapat ito ay naitala at napagkasunduan ng lahat ng sasakupan at ng mga leader ng bansa. Punta naman tayo sa planning process. Una dito, ang planning must be systematic and integrated. Ang plano ay dapat systematic at organized para alam ang step-by-step ng plano para maiwasan ang mga problema at sa pagsasatupad nito. Market supply match is essential. Market push and supply pull factors are important. Ang market supply match ay isa sa pinakamahalaga. Kapag daw ang market ay madaming nagagawa dahil na tinatangkil ito ng mga turista na bumibisita sa isang lugar, mas madaming nagiging income ang ating bansa. Capitalize on the special attributes of an area. Ang ibig sabihin naman nito ay ikakapitalize ang mga special attributes ng isang lugar para mas makilala at para mas maging makilala at maging sikat ito. For example, ang sikat sa lugar namin ngayon ay Ilog ng Labi. So, bilang ang highlights ng Bungabon ay Ilog ng Labi para mas makilala ito at para mabisita ito ng mga turista na hindi pa alam ang lugar ng Ilog ng Labi. Sunod naman ay, not all areas are suitable for tourism environment. Alam naman natin, hindi lahat ng lugar ay angkop para sa tourism development. So, planning is a continuous process. Kahit may original plan na tayo, kailangan pa din natin magplano in case of emergency. Natural and cultural resources provided the foundation for tourism development, but they have capacity limits. Thus, they should be protected through careful sites design and management. Natural and cultural resources provided the foundation, pero dapat meron tayong capacity ng limit para maingatan natin at mas ma-preserve natin yung lugar. At may kasamang pag-aalaga sa proyekto ng tourism development. Urban and rural areas depend on each other for tourism growth. Ang urban daw at ang rural areas ay dapat nagtulungan patungkol sa tourism growth. Kasi parang ang magiging lang din nun yung pinakabansa natin. So cluster is superior to dispersal because its facilities control efficient use in infrastructure and result in time saving for tourists. Kailangan daw natin magkaisa at magtulungan para sa ikamuunlad ng ating bansa. Service depend on attraction. Develop tourist attraction first, then provide tourists. Kailangan natin muna ma-develop ang mga tourist attraction natin. Tapos tsaka tayo mag-provide ng mga kailangan ng tourist. Kasi syempre, walang pupunta na tourist sa lugar natin kung pangit ang lugar natin. dapat daw iayos muna natin ang mga tourist attraction natin, tsaka natin i-provide ang mga kailangan ng mga tourist natin. Transportation requires special planning, engineering, and technology must supplement with market segment. So, kailangan daw na ang transportation ay dapat pinagpaplanuhan ng maigi. Kasi isa ito sa mga tinitingnan ng mga tourist ngayon. For example, kami ng pamilya ko, pupunta kami ng ilog ng Labi. Tapos mababalitaan ko na hindi pala safe at maganda ang daan papuntang Labi. So ako, mas iisipin ko yung safety ng pamilya ko kaysa sa ganda ng ilog ng Labi. So pupunta na lang ako sa ibang destination na safe ang daan. Short stay and longer stay tourism should be both developed as they complement each other. Short stay tourists engage the passive activities in our circuit, while longer stay engage in repetitive and active pursuit. Kailangan din daw na ang accommodation ay maayos, komportable at safe pagtuluyan. Kasi ang tourists ngayon, gusto nila na komportable at safe ang pinagtutuluyan nila. Tourism planning needs according to CIRCA 1988 rather. The need for research, training, and education. Kailangan na kapag nagpaplano daw ay kailangan mag-research patungkol sa kung ano ang dapat i-develop, sino ang target market, at kung ano ang mga possible na trends. Kailangan din daw na mag-training para ma-process natin ang ating plano ng maayos at safe. There is a need for creativity and innovation in order to cope with the ever-changing trends. Kailangan din daw na maging creativity and innovation para makasabay tayo sa uso. Kasi alam naman natin ngayon, napakabilis magsawa ng tao. So, kailangan nating makibagay sa kung ano man ang uso. Tourism must be flexible. Tourism planning must foster individuality and personal satisfaction that can only be derived from traveling. Ang tourism ay dapat flexible. Ang tourism planning ay dapat may sariling katangian para tumatak sa mga turista na bibisita sa lugar. For example, kapag bumisita ka sa isang lugar, kunyari, Labi, ano ang tumatatak? Yung magandang view ng Labi. Ganun. For tourism to be sustainable, the government should undertake the following measure according to MC Kircher, 2003. Establish national tourism objectives that reflect the unique character, opportunities, and constraints in a destination. Ang national tourism daw ay dapat magtatag na nagre-reflect patungkol sa character, opportunities, at limitation ng isang destination. Kailangan nilang pinauunawa sa tao kung ano ang mga limitasyon ng mga destination. Develop a shared vision of what type of tourism is wanted and how to achieve the goal. Kailangan pag nagpaplano tayo, kailangan na iisa daw yung vision natin kung anong type ng tourism ang gusto nating i-develop at kung paano ito maisa sa katuparan ang goal natin. Establish a policy framework to achieve those objectives. Kailangan na magsagawa tayo ng kabuuang policy kung ano ang dapat sundin para maayos at maisa katuparan ang layunin na ito. Develop in collaboration with others, guidelines, policies, and practice for both new tourism projects and management on ongoing tourism project activities. Dapat magkaroon ng pakikipagtulungan sa iba, patakaran, policies, and practice para sa mga bagong proyekto ng turismo at sa pamamahala ng mga tourist activities. Work with the educational institution and other organizations in education, training, and develop programs. Ang pakikipagtulungan sa educational institution and other organizations in education, training, and development programs. Provide a longer-term commitment to move from current situation to more attractive future position. Ayon naman kay Wedger and Lawton, 1999, said that sustainable development can be placed along a development continuum, with the two extremes being laissez-faire and deep ecology. These two extremes offers either the choice between human population and nature. Within these two extremes are resource resource conservation which allow manage to modify growth. Pinangangalagaan ng mga resources sa turismo tulad ng natural attraction gaya ng luma at makabagong puno upang maging paraan sa pag-unlad. Tapos ang last naman is resource prevention which supports zero population growth. Ito naman ay isang uri ng pagpe-preserve ng mga resources ng lugar gamit ang strict na limitasyon ng pagpasok ng mga tourist.
And that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for listening. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. We will do our best to answer all your questions.